Hello, and welcome to Bear Academy. I'm Bear. This week, I met a UX entrepreneur, an agency founder in New Zealand, in Auckland. So this guy, Brendan Jarvis, he founded the best UX research lab here in the country. We talked a lot of things around UX, around design, around how Kiwi can better cope with the new norm and get ready for the digital challenge ahead of us. And also on the down to the ground level, how we as individuals can get ready for the new age, and how we can develop ourselves to be a better designer. Yeah, a lot of heaps of great insights from this episode. Let's jump into it. Could you introduce yourself a little bit at first? It's just a basic introduction for yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Brendan Jarvis and I'm the managing founder of The Space In Between. And The Space In Between is a specialist UX research practice and also the home to New Zealand's first and only world-class UX lab.
Right. That's a very clear and understandable description. And I just want to jump directly to the things I found. The most interesting thing about you, what I found, is that you started your own business at 1995, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's going back a while. Yeah.
How about start with this story?
Yeah, sure. So at that time, I was fortunate enough to grow up next to my grandparents, and they were very, very generous people, and they had purchased a PC, the first PC that I think anyone in our extended family had seen at that time, because at that time they were, $4,000 or $5,000 just for a very basic computer. And I ended up spending more and more time over there. I was so curious about this thing, the computer, and it really captivated me. And about the same time as they bought the computer, they also got an internet connection.
Wow.
And I started learning through various websites how to code HTML.
At that time?
Yeah,
wow.
I know.
Normally people just start to learn like basic or other language about coding, but you jump directly to HTML.
Yeah, I can't remember how exactly I found my way to it, but like I said, I was very curious, and there's a reason why I'm so pasty white. I've spent so much time in front of screens in my life, it's quite scary. Yeah. So I ended up teaching myself the basics of it, and I thought what would be really great is if I could get some clients. And what I ended up doing is going through the Yellow Pages at that time, which was a telephone directory that we had of businesses in New Zealand, and I wrote them a letter by hand, and I faxed these letters, these sales letters pitching myself as a website design service to these businesses. And I think it probably only lasted a couple of weeks. I probably sent 20 or 30 of these, and then I remember my grandfather being very grumpy one day, and I asked him what was going on, and he's received the telephone bill, because back then sending faxes wasn't free, and that was the end of that business. So there were no clients, but there was a determination.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a drop one of your business. But
failed business. Yeah.
But I think that's a lot of great points that I can find from this story. The first is that it's quite unique for your family can invest in PC and internet at that time, because it feels like people not probably invest something, a TV or other things, or larger cars, so things like that. I think that's a really different way, so it can get a better position for you and really open the eyes, and especially PC and internet is really expensive. Was really expensive at that time.
Like I mentioned, my grandparents were very generous people, and they had a large family, and They were blue collar background, so I was the first person in my family, my extended family. I'm talking 5 children that my grandparents had, my aunties and uncles, and all of their children, some of which have also gone on to university. But I was the first person to receive a university degree in my extended family. And I suppose why I'm saying that is a lot of that had to do with the willingness and generosity of my grandparents to invest in things that they felt would help us to better further ourselves and better educate ourselves. They were spectacular people.
Yeah, and also the other thing I feel quite impressive is that you jump not only on HTML, that's another story, but you jump directly to business. So a lot of people, from my understanding, probably at the beginning of learning something with just how I can do better or what is the skills and knowledges I need to learn. But it's quite different that for you, you jump directly into business even when you are only 10 at that time. Yes.
Yeah, I suppose it has to do with, I want to, I suppose, make this clear. I didn't go without anything. I had, I had like I mentioned, I had a very loving extended family, but I grew up as a only child, and my mum was a solo mum, and I certainly saw the more difficult side of life when you don't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I suppose that was an early influence in how I felt about myself and what I wanted to achieve with my life from a very early age. And I suppose the business actually had its roots a couple of years earlier. I remember going to primary school. I was 8. I think it was Standard 2 they called it back in the day. And my teacher had asked me one morning before class started, what did I want to be when I grew up? This sort of quintessential question that you ask a child. Yeah. And I actually didn't say what. I said who. I said I want to be Bill Gates. Uh-huh. And I suppose I'd been captivated by the computer world, and of course at that time Bill Gates was and still is, I suppose, one of the preeminent figures in that revolution. Right. And it was a very exciting time for a young person. Yeah. Wow. How about what's the next business attempt after that? So the next business attempt was, I was very fortunate at around about the age of 15. I had a close family friend who had always, I suppose, seen that I was maybe a little bit different than some other people, starting businesses at 10, and I was a very curious child and really loved technology. And he and some other pharmacists had started wanted to start one of the first online pharmacies in the country. That was called Medicine Express. And he had realized that I'd developed some capability in the area of programming. I'd been building websites for my Quake clan, which was a computer game back in the day, and I'd been doing hobbyist type work. And he, as I said, they were launching this online pharmacy, and he gave me a great opportunity to basically design and build and market this pharmacy for them. And rather than pay me a wage and employ me, what they said to me is that they would pay me per order that came in, a certain amount of money. And so that was, I suppose, a very early, but this time profitable start to running a business with the right incentives. It was just me still at that stage, but I was being paid based on the performance I could deliver as opposed to the time that I was investing. So that was the next business, and that actually ended up being a place that I worked and managed until I finished university, and they sold that business.
It sounds like a quite successful one.
It
lasted for a long time.
Well, it certainly helped. I didn't have to work at the supermarket anymore, and I was able to control my time more because I was able to leverage my expertise at that early age into something that was, relatively profitable for that stage of life. And it gave me a great start and I suppose a good story to tell when I finished university and was in the job market.
Right.
But I don't like to tell people that I was effectively an online drug dealer. That sort of raises a few eyebrows. But I can say for certain that they were all
just
above board. Yeah, it was all above board. There were no illegal drugs. It was all legitimate pharmacy. But yes, it was an export focused business, and it was a lot of fun.
Right, because my first job in New Zealand was work at a health supplement company online. So it's kind of like the same. People, some of my friends ask, "Who are you working on?" I said, "Drug dealer."
Yeah.
So drugs on my table every day, things like that. It's quite interesting, and it's really impressive that at the beginning of your study and it's quite different from other people's career plan or strategy, because probably I don't know, maybe for a general Kiwi at the beginning working supermarket or some place and then go to university and find a job, maybe a permanent role or some work for some companies, and started and after a few years invest a house and then move on to his or her own business, or probably just stay in that in that industry and jump to different companies, and that's all. So how about you? What's the roadmap and what's the career path for that, and finally got you here?
Yeah, so I mean, it hasn't all been a success story. After finishing university, I decided I was going to start a proper business this time, and I went into business with someone who was a bit more experienced and had an established business, and we wanted to effectively do web design. That was the simple way of describing it. And
have you considered to join a company at the beginning, or just not an option for you?
Yeah, I remember in the last year or end of the second year of university that people around you start thinking about which companies they're going to go and work for when they finish their undergraduate, and there's the graduate programs that all the consultancies and other businesses that come into the business school, because I studied e-commerce and business in Victoria. So there was that path, but I never wanted to go down that path. I always wanted to have control over how I spent my time. And I wanted to live, I suppose, with more risk than maybe other people were willing to live with. I don't know if I saw it that way at the time. I think I was just rather excited by the possibilities that were presented by running your own company. But in the end, I suppose I went to this went to start this business with this other guy, and I learned a couple of hard lessons. One lesson I learned was be very careful with who you go into business with. Because what appears at face value is not always the case. And the other lesson that I learned is that I would have probably made more money if I was on the benefit for the 1 year that I was in that business. It was not successful. It was very poor in terms of its financial performance, and it was ultimately after 12 months I decided, because of the relationship that I'd had with this other person deteriorating and the poor financial performance of the endeavour, that I would I suppose take a step into the real world and go and get a real job, which I did, and I went to work for a design agency in Wellington.
Right. I think it sounds like a really common experience for business starters to choose the right people to work with. Because I have the similar experience. When I started my company in China. The first partner was a very close friend, and at that time I didn't know too much about that, and just think, we play together very good. Now we can work together, but things doesn't go that way, and then even the friendship doesn't go that way after that. So it's quite a shame.
Yes, it is.
I think that's a lot of people mention that, but I think probably even when you are experiencing, like have the actual experience, you will finally understand. That's the kind of like a hard lesson to learn. But
There's only one way to learn that
just,
as well, you know.
Just do it.
You just do it. And it is unfortunate because often those friendships don't survive.
Yeah.
And it's the price that you pay. My observation of these situations has been that even when it's not a lot of money, when there's money involved, it really changes the dynamic between two people.
Yeah.
Doesn't always, I suppose it increases the risk that dynamic changes negatively between two people.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any, I'm not sure I'm experienced enough to say that there are any strategies to try and avoid that. But what I do know is a good idea because it's happened more than once. Actually, in the space in between, I had a business partner who became a good friend and then exited the company after, I think, 3 years. And one thing that we did that made it easier to have that conversation, although it was still difficult, was that we had a shareholders agreement that was quite clear about how things would happen if someone wanted to leave the company, what the process would be in terms of valuation and how it would run. But those human relationships, even though you might be well planned, sometimes don't survive that process, which is a shame.
But I think that you mentioned that it's at first a business partner and then become a very good friend. That's the better sequence rather than be a friend first, then business partner, and then stranger at last. So,
well, you stand to lose more, I suppose, if it's a friend first.
Yeah.
You know, because you know what you had before.
Yeah. And you mentioned that then you went to a design agency, because I read your articles, your interviews, and you said that some people, probably your previous employer or someone said you don't fit this advertisement industry. Is that something that you can share? Like, what's that experience?
So after working for the design agency in Wellington for a couple of years, I got the opportunity to come up to Auckland and start their office up here. And that was all great. That was a fantastic opportunity. I think I was 21 or 2 at the time.
Wow.
Managed to convince them to give me the title general manager, which I thought was very impressive. Gave myself a bit of a self high five for that one. But it was a great time, great opportunity. I had a lovely team up here. And then the great recession hit in 2008, and it became very, very, very difficult. So I ended up leaving the design agency and getting this opportunity in another business. And I was only there for 3 months, so you might be able to sort of read between the lines and see how well that went.
Right.
And I remember
it was a mistake.
I think it was maybe a mistake on both parties' ends. But I remember being in the boardroom, and it was one of those meetings. I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but sometimes you have these meetings and there's only ever going to be one way that they're going to play out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good meeting as far as I was concerned from my perspective. Yeah. And I got sat down basically, and I would describe it as a character assassination. I got a blow by blow of basically all of my shortcomings, which culminated with a statement that was, I don't think that you're in the right industry.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no.
Meeting.
Yeah, it was a very hard meeting. Actually, I remember leaving that day, and I don't mind saying this, that I think I cried in my car. I'd never had anyone say anything so cutting to the bone about my abilities, and not because I lived in some sort of cotton wool environment where I was told my whole life how wonderful I was. I was quite aware that I had some shortcomings, but I've never really had anyone try and put the knife in quite so deep, and no one has ever done that to me since. But it wasn't something that I look at and I think, it was a horrible thing to do to somebody, but it wasn't a bad thing to have happened to me, because I basically used that in a large part to give myself the motivation to, I suppose, prove that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Not to that person in particular, but just I knew he was wrong, and it was now time to really make that happen.
Yeah.
So then I started the space in between.
Wow, I think sometimes we just need kind of the external motivation, and sometimes the challenge will make us stronger, or it depends on different people. But in general, I do find that should be motivated by something, and this type of the statement, that's kind of the one of the things that we really want to fight back and to show what we are able to do, and to prove them wrong. And I think at this stage, probably without this meeting, there will be no space in between.
That's right, and that's why I look at that, and I think, you could look at that and I could have been crushed by it, and it could have ruined my confidence.
Right.
But if someone ever says something like that to you, I think it's really important that you live in how much that hurts for the moment, but that you get some perspective on that, and you realize that just because somebody else is saying that about you does not make it true. Yeah. You are the author of your own story, and you get to decide what's written on the next page. Right. And don't let anybody hold the pen for you. It's really important that you write the book yourself. Yeah. So I think ultimately it was a very positive thing. It reaffirmed a few self-beliefs that I held.
One thing I find probably quite interesting, I don't know if it's only me or from other people, because you mentioned that this harsh meeting happened in advertisement industry. Because I also heard some other stories related or similar experience, like other designers find working advertisement, especially agency companies, quite challenging, because they don't have a lot of touch points with clients or with the customers or users, but only probably one person, like the art director or the creative director, will make the decision if it's okay, yes or no. So do you have any related insights or stories around this? Because what I've used to work at in China is kind of like similar, but I don't know from here, like New Zealand, what like from the especially like the traditional creative industry, how it looks and how it works. Yeah, from agency's perspective.
So what you have just talked about reminds me of a recent conversation I had with a gentleman called Dr. David Travis. And David is a really highly esteemed usability and user researcher in the UK. And what he said to me was that good design doesn't live inside designers. And I thought, that's really interesting, because that doesn't sound like a very good thing to say in design circles. Most designers probably think, what do you mean good design doesn't live inside me? I'm the designer. And what I'm getting at is there's this attitude, I suppose, in traditional creative industries, and even in design in general, and digital design, and creative people in general, that they are the source of the creativity. But I think when it comes to the design of experiences or products or services that other humans engage with, which, let's face it, is most of the work that we now do, particularly in the digital industry, that the good design or the great design is actually found in the space that the user is interacting with whatever you've created. And it's in that space that you can get the insights that you can then go back and apply and refine your design with, that will actually make it great. And without that input, if you're just operating in a vacuum, you're caught up in your own ego, and you're not willing to be brave and to put that in front of someone else that it's designed for to use it, it's very difficult or hard to see that you could ever be wildly successful in your craft.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's, from my understanding, it feels like a designer's value or the design's value is evaluated by the customer's experience, and it's really some kind of we don't have a very clear measurement for taking the data accurate to measure how it performs, how it works. And yeah, that's really an interesting point. But I think at this stage, the modern design trends or the how we do it now, it's much better than it used to be. Because before that, it's like a black box. Everyone's doing their own work and then do a presentation and show, here's the thing.
Yeah.
And people don't, I like it, or it's I don't like it, and then go back and work for another few weeks. But now, like, we working design sprint, agile, and things like that. So we try to validate things in the day-to-day basis. So this is some things that we're trying as a designer or in design industry is trying to convince that this is the right way to do that, or this is a proper way to do that. And I think a lot of designers now not afraid of show things in the process. And before that, probably people still think, yeah, I'm not ready for showing this and not ready to discuss the things in process because still not finished. But yeah, now I think if you can have the right understanding of the design thinking methodology and all the things, and it's not a problem. It's all right. You say no, and you let people know it's not the final version, and there will be an iteration, continuous improving. But as long as the other guy understand value, so yeah, I think that's something we're trying to improve or still on the way. So that's what I'm trying to. Yeah, that's what I'm interested in about, like what it used to be.
Yeah, well, what it used to be was more of a battle of opinions, and there is still an element of that goes on, and I think it's encouraging that there is more of an openness, though, to settling those opinions by saying, okay, great, we might have a difference of opinion here, but let's both be adults about this. Let's de-risk the situation and determine what might be the right way forward, which may be neither of the opinions that we hold, quite frankly. It could be a third opinion or a third perspective that we haven't heard, and that's to actually put it to the test with the customer.
Right.
And that to me is a real sign of, and I don't really like this term maturity, but for lack of a better word, that it's a real sign of a maturity of an organisation when they're willing to hold those opinions loosely and they're willing to settle the disputes, if you like, by actually testing that with real users.
Yeah, that's actually a quite good point to relate it to what I just saw, like the user testing room and the lab you just showed me. For the people who's listening, probably can't see it, but I just saw the world class interviewing room, and it's here at a space in between. And I think it's a great way that can show people rather than the opinions, show some data and show some statistics about the performance. So it's not just the opinions war, and it's quite common for a lot of companies that if you show a design to different stakeholders, so like different team members, and normally senior stakeholders' opinion probably gonna win. And even there are bias, or there are some like it's not on the same perspective with the customer, and they always win. But now I think if we as a designer can have the better way to defend our design, that will be great. So it's just reminded me that what I just saw about your lab, so which is quite impressive. Could you tell us a little bit more about this? I know it's jumped a little bit fast, but I really wanted to know that. Yeah.
So the lab it's not a new idea.
Yeah.
But I feel it is a very important expression of a commitment to being user-centered. And what it is it's a place where we can bring a design team and anybody else in the organization that has an interest in the design. So whether it's a new feature or a new product, or whether we're just trying to assess a competitor and learn a bit more about their user experience, where we can bring them into a space, and in that same space can be some real live users, not abstractions, not analytics data, not personas that may or may not be relevant, but actual people that reflect the user that you're trying to design for, trying to create products and services for. And while there is an analytical aspect of what we can measure when we have the user in this setting, what we're actually trying to do is learn through observation of their behavior how they are experiencing the product, the feature that we are trying to learn more about. And generally what we do is we give the user a series of scenarios or tasks that reflect some form of real world behavior that they would otherwise be performing. And we ask them to complete those tasks. And we look and we listen and we learn and we find where the problems are, and we keep our mind open as to what the opportunities might be to solve those problems.
Yeah, because I found that just a really great way that can collect insights from those observations, and some companies, organizations, they probably have their own design team and already do the same thing. And what do you think could be the advantage from space in between, like to do that and to provide those kind of the research? What's the difference between the in-house design team and another agency to do that?
Yeah. So when it comes to in-house design teams, I have always seen what I'm trying to achieve here as being very much their ally.
Right.
So this is a place and an experience and a service that actually helps that internal design team to do a couple of things. It helps them to more easily scale and reliably repeat their efforts to understand their users because of the nature of this purpose-built facility and what it enables. Sometimes you find in a design team internally they might just be overwhelmed and they need some extra capacity. Other times you might find that there's very talented people in there, but the organization hasn't yet seen the light when it comes to providing them with the space to actually run the kind of research that's going to make a difference in their design. So there's that aspect of what this enables for the design team. And the other thing that it enables is it's outside of the building. This is a place that exists outside of the organization.
Neutral place.
It's a neutral place. It doesn't suffer from any of the politics of who owns the lab inside. Can I trust that the perspective that I'm getting back from whoever isn't biased by a particular opinion that is held? But it's also more than that. It's a place that is designed to raise the credibility and the esteem of our practice as designers, and particularly UX. And we can invite people from across the business to participate in the design process in this beautiful world-class setting. And it's that kind of ability to help change the conversation inside the company that really sits underneath all of the very important research and UX work that we do here with teams. But it's really ultimately I'm trying to change the design culture in New Zealand and give designers another way that they can help to further that cause.
Right, yeah. Because what I know is that a lot of companies, they have the probably have the user testing setup or environment, but some of them was driven by from marketing perspective. It's not from UX perspective, and sometimes it's also like what you mentioned. It's not a neutral place. Even the setup is perfect. If you go to a company's office as a customer to do the user testing, and more or less you got some like inception from about your mind, and probably there will be some bias even before the testing. So I think that would be great as a neutral place.
Yeah. And we can hand on heart say to participants when they come in,
right,
we didn't have anything to do with the design of what it is that you're going to see today. You know, we can really honestly say that. And the other thing that we can say is that we don't have a horse in the race when it comes to the design or the development of this product either. So to our clients, we are only focused on helping you to see the user's truth. That's it. We're not there to try and sell you other services. We're completely impartial, completely independent, and we're giving you the truth of that user.
Do you have any story or any case study or any story related to the user testing here? Is there something that can go public or something you can share?
Eventually there will be. There's nothing that I can speak about at the moment. Being research, it's quite difficult to talk candidly about some of the things that we've been involved with. What I can tell you that has been really exciting, and I can talk about publicly, is we've formed a relationship with Tech Futures Lab, and we've had several of their short course product management groups through, and it's been so great seeing people that come from various different corporate backgrounds, whether it's accounting and finance or whether it's people that have worked in marketing, and bringing them into a space like this and having them with each other evaluate the prototypes that they have been creating as part of their work that they've been doing at Tech Futures Lab. And it's a really fun evening and really eye-opening. I think everyone that comes in here just immediately gets the value of usability testing. User testing. And it's not really about selling them as such. I think it's just, you might hear about this stuff and it might live in, you know, some corner office in the organization, or it might be perceived to be part of just the design team, or maybe just one person's role. But I think until you actually come to a place like this and you see it happening, it's difficult to really grasp just how useful it can be.
I would definitely book another session for this podcast interview, like when some case is ready for share. And definitely want to hear some behind scene stories. And what I can imagine, like if I'm a design manager, it will be great to collaborate with this facilitation and then show the value to other stakeholders, and then can let them understand what's the value and how it works, and then even later stage, it's not exactly what like what you're doing at here. They can still get a better process for their own companies. So things like that just came to my mind, and it's really interesting to see. What another thing came to my mind is that from the book Lean UX, the author mentioned like rapidly or general user interview, like every week invite 3 customers, real customers, go to the office and have a conversation with the team, and probably if the product has new features, do some user testing. If not, just talk with them and understand the behavior and collect some data from that, and which will be great to create a better persona. But something is really valuable is to by talking with them, the whole team can understand the customer better.
That's right.
So, So that's something I'm thinking, like it could be some other types of the package that you can provide for different customers, different companies.
That cadence that you've touched on there, that sort of repetition of involving the user in the process, whether it's just conversation and discovery-based interview, or whether it's to assess something that you've produced and try and get their behavior and their perspective on it, that's really important, and that is something that actually develops like when you go to the gym. You first start out, you can only do 10 push-ups, but if you keep going back every day, you soon find that you can do 100. It's a muscle that gets stronger, and the only way it gets stronger and the only way that you're going to get better insights and create better products is to be regularly and reliably running these studies and these types of conversations. Otherwise it's often too late, too little in the process, and it's too hard to adjust a design when everyone just wants to celebrate it going live. No one wants to hear bad news right at the end. So doing it on the way through, even doing your explorative research before you've even decided what it is that you're going to build. You need to be doing it, and you probably aren't doing as much as you could do.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And also, like, the location is quite good. It's in the center of the city. So yeah. Because we talked things about the space in between. Now, from my understanding, it's a UX lab, but before that, you also work for different clients, like provide a UX solution, design solution for them.
That's right. Yeah. We've been doing that for 10 years, and I suppose that's what gives us the capability and the credibility to apply the research methods that we were using as part of our own design practice, and then only focus on applying those parts of what we were doing for our clients now. That we have been successful practitioners of design in the field that we are now advising on the insights to inform other designers to make better decisions. It
might not be a proper question, but I really want to ask is that, do you think it's because the design it's so easy to be judged by individual level, and also, like, from your agency experience, you already work in this industry for more than 10 years, and so why do you think it would be the good strategy to build a research focused company? Is it because you feel it's a better way to back the design, or like it's a better strategy for the clients or for your business? I'm not sure if I describe my question clearly, but
I think I understand what you're asking. So I suppose I looked at what it was that was most enjoyable out of the design process, and what was conversely what was the hardest part. And the hardest part and the most enjoyable part is always the part when you put your work in front of a real life user and you see what happens. And often it's not what you expected, and sometimes it's not what you would have liked. And that experience is a really valuable experience. And I looked at how we were running those experiences and thought about, well, is that the greatest impact that we can have if we just keep that inside our own design practice, or is this something that actually needs to be let out of the cage, and something that we can help a wider set of designers to do better, to make better decisions? And I decided that really was the most interesting, the most valuable thing that we could do. And I looked at what else we were doing and realized that it would be very difficult for us to honestly say that we are going to do the research and insights part of a project without any bias if we were also selling, if you like, for that terrible word selling the design implementation, whether that's the UX and the UI, or whether it's on the other end of it, the development, that there was an inherent bias in the solution and the things that we might recommend, or the things that we might leave out, even if we are doing our best to step away and be impartial. It's almost like having the student mark their own exam. There's always the risk that they just might not do it 100% above board. And I didn't want to carry that bias through to this next phase of what it is that we're doing. So we will never work on anything that we've been involved in or have been asked to be involved in any of the implementation. It's only focused on the insights, and that way we can be truly independent.
That's really clever strategy and also like necessary for all the clients and all the potential customers. Yeah.
I suppose also generally, if you look at the industry, I mean, how many design agencies are there? I mean, how many? I mean, there are just so many, and everybody generally says that we can do everything, and I just don't. I know that. I mean, I've made those kind of claims, in the past. We're full service, whatever that means. It often means nothing in reality, and there are very few companies in this country that can truly say that they are full service. So you look at the credibility that sits behind a lot of the messaging that's out there in the marketplace, and the truth is people are spreading themselves too thin, and each of these things, and whether it's UI, UX research, development, they're all massive specialties in and of themselves, but for whatever reason in New Zealand we have this tendency to avoid specialisation, to overly generalise, and I think ultimately that reflects poorly in a lot of businesses' positioning. They're just not meaningful. It's very difficult unless you've got massive scale to command any attention if you're saying that you do everything.
Right. So always specialist rather than generalist.
That's definitely the direction that we've adopted. Yeah, and, I mean that allows us to build deep expertise. Things like that will really be able to stand up and make a big difference in a client's business, rather than just coming up with some fancy words and the whole fake it till you make it sort of approach that some companies take with their clients' money is just almost criminal. It's a very dangerous way and a very poor way for the client to experience the result.
Yeah. Do you think New Zealand is ready for this? Because, I came to New Zealand around 4 years, and I think people here really nice and really ready to get to adapt new things. But from the company's level, is it a mature market that get ready to hire specialists rather than generalists?
I think we're right on the cusp. But I've got a horse in this race as well, so I almost have to believe that we're ready.
Yeah, leap of faith.
Yeah, and in all business or all significant change in business, there is a certain leap of faith. From what I have experienced so far in the marketplace since making this big shift, I'm very encouraged by the change that I've made.
Yeah.
But it's too early. It's too early to say. I can't see the future, but I'm very, very encouraged.
Yeah. And the other thing, what I'm thinking is that the pandemic, COVID thing, actually accelerated the whole world, especially for New Zealand, to be ready for the competition all around the world. And before that, maybe it's not a problem. Like as a local market, even everyone's speaking English at the same as Canada and US, but it's totally different market, and you don't need to compete with other market. In the individual level, it's the same. In the company's level, it's the same. But now it's different, because now people get used to collaborate or work remotely. With that, internationally, it's not an issue.
Yeah.
And also the competition could be from other major market, like the other part of the world, and we don't need to talk about different languages market, but just on English speaking market is still quite different. And if we are ready, so for that perspective, be a specialist will be focused on your the specific area that you're really good at, would be a better strategy. I can do all the things and I can be ready for all the a full stack, or full service like what you mentioned. Probably that will be a better strategy, that focus on one thing rather than other than.
Have you heard of the saying number 8 wire?
Is it a wire,
the fencing wire?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's used as an analogy for New Zealand's historical approach to innovation.
So everything is just to make
we
it.
can make it up with a bit of number 8 wire.
Yeah.
And it's a really harmful myth. It's really done us a disservice in the last 20 to 30 years to carry that myth with us, because ultimately what it's meant is that we've underinvested in the facilities, the capabilities and the people to really help us keep up with the pace of competition globally.
Yeah.
We're quite an insular nation, and we're an island nation, and so by our geography sometimes our perspective is too close to home and needs to be further abroad. And really for the next 100 years we need to start looking more openly at how business is done internationally, and actively starting, perhaps like China has done in the last 20 to 30 years, taking what is valuable, the learnings that we can see from overseas, and really applying them back to our own context with purpose, so that we can actually better defend and grow our own prosperity, because change is coming. Change is already here. You know, what happens when Amazon decides to open up in New Zealand? You know, what is the game plan? You know, IKEA is on its way. I mean, I know I'm talking retail here, but there are other examples. The internet has removed a lot of the geographical boundaries that used to protect certain industries. And I think any industry, there are no industries that I can think of off the top of my head that should be feeling really smug and comfortable about what the next 20, 30, 40 years brings. So it's important that we start building our capabilities and our capacities to respond more effectively to innovation, and to actually start investing, seriously investing in ourselves, and not trying to do everything on the cheap. And I feel that we use number 8 wire sometimes to justify underinvesting in our people and also in our facilities and capabilities.
Number 8 wire. That's a good and for. I want to bring the last 2 questions down the ground level, because there are a lot of things on the business, and a lot of people listening to this podcast probably going to work as a professional, maybe as a designer or other types of professional in their own career. So would you have some suggestion or advice, like for example, like in the junior or in the early stage of a designer's career, if you're going to provide some suggestion or guidance, like what would you suggest that for junior professionals, maybe not just designers, professionals, and here in New Zealand, I think we can still focus on this, and then sure.
So I love talking to younger people about their futures. In fact, they often start talking to me about their futures, and the one thing that I always say to them is, stop talking about it, start taking massive action. You have to commit to a certain direction. You have to stop worrying about whether it's the right direction or the wrong direction, because the truth is, if you never ever step through that door, you'll never know. And don't try and hold all of your options open, because it will leave you not taking any direction that is meaningful. So you need to take action. You need to walk through one of these opportunities in front of you and just give it everything. Focus.
That's a great suggestion.
And if you don't enjoy it, that's fine. You will have learnt something from it. You will have worked hard, and there's another door that you'll be able to walk through. But just get started and take lots of action.
Right.
And don't live in the 9-to-5 mentality. I'm not saying you have to be a slave to your boss or anything like that. That's a horrible way to spend your life. But if you truly love what you do, the standard work day or work week won't apply. And nothing great happens without massive amounts of action, and that doesn't happen within 40 hours.
Right. Actually, that's related to my next question, but it's great to hear that I prefer them to not only work, not only focus the energy on 9 to 5, but also invest some time on and effort on the things they love to do.
Because I suppose what I'm saying there is that you are investing in yourself.
Right. Yeah.
So while you might work for someone else, and there's nothing wrong with that, most people in the world, 99% of people in the world work for someone else. You are always working for yourself. So that time that you invest in yourself after work and whatever it is that you enjoy or that you're interested in, you are investing in your future, and it's important to see it with the long-term perspective and not just the what am I getting out of this today?
Yeah.
Because that is not how prosperous lives are built. It's built with a longer-term view.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Pursue all the like the expert in UX field here. Do you have any career suggestion for someone? Because a lot of people reach out to me like they would like to become a UX designer. Sometimes they would like to transition from another career path, or just as a graduate, just would like to start their own career as a UX designer. And I'm sure that you have some suggestion from your perspective and also from your understanding of the market of the career. Do you have any, like, go to design school or just join a company or something like that, read books?
Well, they call design a practice, and it's called a practice for a very good reason, because you get better at it the more practice you do.
Yeah.
So the most important thing if someone wants to become a UX designer is to stop wanting to become a UX designer and start doing UX design.
Yeah.
Because design is something that you do, and you only become it once you do it. And a good example I can think of is Charles, actually, who's working here, who's finishing up shortly, which is very sad for me, but going to a great opportunity. Charles, before he became a UX and UI designer, invested a lot of effort in putting up his own work on Dribble and Behance that he was working on in his own time.
Right.
I mean, yes, he invested in his formal education, but he went the extra mile after the 9 to 5 and applied what he was trying to teach himself to design challenges that weren't commercial projects.
Right. Yeah.
So do the design work. It's a doing thing, it's a practice. Don't think about it too much, just start doing it.
Yeah.
And you will suck initially, and the only way that you get better is to keep on doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually reminded me an article or like another podcast that I recently consumed is that as a practice like design, it's the same as other practice that work out or do a pottery or anything like that. The first 100 pieces of work will be suck. So yeah, don't worry about that. Your purpose is to go to the process and get the first 100 like the pieces as soon as possible. And if you move to the next stage, this is the first stage. You definitely need to practice a lot and make mistakes. So,
I mean, I look at work that we did even 3 or 4 years ago, some of it, and I think, oh man, we could have done that so much better. But at the time, it probably was great. We thought it was great. It probably was great, but you get better at things, and therefore you see the shortcomings in your previous work.
Yeah.
But that's progress. That is telling you that you are getting better.
Yeah, I think that's great, and just keep practice. And doesn't matter like some specific strategy approaches, books or talking to people, but practice is the general, like the core of design. Yeah.
In fact, Seth Godin, who some of you may have heard of, he is a blogger, marketer, author, speaker, very, very inspirational individual. He's just released a book called The Practice, which was essentially all about what we're talking about as creative people, as you need to engage in your practice.
Yeah, because especially I found from some even junior professionals, they are afraid of make mistakes, and their defense is that I'm a professionalist. When I find my work is not perfect, I prefer not to do it. So that's kind of like, I think it's just an excuse or some kind of a mindset, because they haven't go to the whole process and doesn't have the understanding of that. But yeah,
look, I've got an almost 2.5-year-old son, and watching him try and fail and try and fail and try and fail.
Yeah,
this is what growing up is. It is a series of minor failures in quick succession.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is it's a series of minor successes in quick succession.
Right.
And at some point along the way, the world tells us that we suck at something or that we can't do it perfectly, and we start to care more about what other people think than what we actually think.
Right.
And our education system, the way that we assess people and the types of things that we I suppose put in children's heads for 15 years or more before they come out of a formal education setting into a job, tells them and teaches them to be very risk averse, because who wants to be wrong and who wants to be made fun of for being wrong? We're very binary and black and white in the way that we assess educational achievement, and that does have an impact on how children view the world. And a lot of that mentality that you're observing in people that are junior designers is coming from conditioning that they received in our education system. So that's probably a bit beyond the scope of the podcast, but it's definitely part of the problem, and it's something that we also need to reinvent and redesign.
Right.
Is how we're educating people,
so that
because all that stuff just gets in the way of great design, right? It's just all noise.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you never try, how on earth are you ever going to be great at something?
Yeah, we can book another session. Yeah, thank you, Brendan. That's a great, a lot of insights I've got, and I believe people who's listening can get a lot. And if they have anything would like to know more, your website would be the best way.
Yeah, you can find me at thespaceinbetween.co.nz or on LinkedIn, Brendan Jarvis. That's BrendanJarvis, and on Twitter at the same, Brendan Jarvis.
Right, cool. Thank you, Brendan. That's really very great to have you here.
Great to be here. Yeah. Thanks, Bear.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers. Bye.